So we're here for an exciting overview of the structure of the Seder night. Because the Seder night, Leila Seder, as Gav said before, the holy night of the year, which is definitely a holy night, and can reach mamish great heights at that night with the many things which are going on, but often also confuses people because there's so many things going on that, I can't keep track of everything, all the details. So what I want to do is to take you first on a bird's eye view, see the big picture, and then slowly zoom in and see the more detailed parts and see the structure of the various parts as well. Because there's so many parts and so many details, you think, oh, it's just a conglomerate of so many things, one after the other. How do they connect to each other? So what I prepared for you here in the sheets and the handout is you have, and if you have it's going to be a PDF as part of the presentation on the online. Yeah, but if you open up the first page, where it has the outline of the Seder, which is on the board, every Haggadah. Don't give it out now. Just afterwards. The outline of the Seder night, you'll find every Haggadah will have these 15 highlighted bold points at the beginning. There are 15 highlights of the night. Now, these 15 highlights are not necessarily 15 mitzvahs by themselves, or these are some are more important, some are less important, some are Torah, some are rabbinic, some are custom. But these are the 15 points which every Haggadah starts with. But if you look at it's there are 15. I thought Friday night, Yom Tov night. There's so many. So let's start from the beginning. There are 3 parts to the Seder. There's the beginning part, the middle, and the end. Beginning part, Kiddush, right? Now, every Friday night, if I ask you, what happens Friday night? Well, Friday night we make Kiddush, we have a meal, and then we bench. So the Friday night this year, which happened to also be the first night of Pesach, has the same thing. You make Kiddush, you have a meal, afterwards you bench. Same 3 points, same 3 sections. So it's not that different. However, right? Hold on. It's not that different. However, on Pesach night, we have a special mitzvah. What's the mitzvah of telling of the going out of Egypt? When do we do that? Well, we do that between Kiddush and the meal. So we have Kiddush, we have the Magi, telling going out of Egypt, and then we have the meal and benching following. So now we already added one element which is more, or which is different, which is special for Leila Seder. So that is the Magid. So Kiddush is the same, the meal is the same, benching is the same. Magid is right in the middle. Then the rabbis added that besides benching, the whole Seder should finish up in a long section of praise, Hallel. The same Hallel which we do in Shul at all the holidays, at Rosh Chodesh, should be done at the end of the Seder or following the Seder as the 4th part of the Seder, or you can say the 3rd part of the Seder, after benching, as part of, after we told the story, we're going to speak about eating the Matzah, you have to go and praise God, do Hallel. So now already we see that we added 2 special elements for the Seder. So if you look at it in the outline, you see that Kaddish is the beginning, Magid is the part which was just added. Number 5 is the Magid, it's highlighted, but it shouldn't be highlighted. But the Magid is the part which we added. Then we have the meal part, which is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. All of that is the 2nd part of the Seder. And then you have the 3rd part of the Seder, which is you can call the meal part of the Barech, Hallel, and Nirtzah. And we're going to be looking at each part. So if you look at the Seder, it's not that complex. You have the opening part of the Seder, Kiddush and Magid, and then you have the second half, the middle part, the eating part, and then you have the praising, the thanking God, benching, and Hallel part. Great. If you look at the mitzvahs of the Seder, and I'm now going to scroll to the second page, the mitzvahs of the Seder, you find there, and I'm going to making it a bit larger. You find there that we have covered the first big mitzvah, Torah mitzvah, which we have at the Seder. Torah mitzvah number 1, Sipor Yetziat Mitzrayim. And we're going to get into that and see exactly how we fulfill that and what's the structure in the Seder itself. But that's the big one. So that's the Magid. That's point number 5 on the left side in the outline page. That's the Magid. That's the Torah mitzvah of the telling of the going out of Egypt. It's done again between Kiddush and the meal. Then the second Torah mitzvah is that the meal itself contains the poor man's bread. But contains the bread, the matzah, which the Torah says we should eat on Leila Seder. So that's a Torah mitzvah. Meaning, every Friday night we eat bread. But the 2 times a year we eat bread where it's a Torah mitzvah. Pesach is one. Who knows the other one? Sukkos. Leil Sukkos. The night of Sukkos. When we 6 months later or 6 months back, we also, it's a Torah mitzvah to eat bread in our sukkah. For Leila Seder, we eat matzah at our home. So that's the same Torah mitzvah. It's a Torah mitzvah, and that is the 2 big Torah mitzvahs which apply on the Seder night. What are the big rabbinic mitzvahs, meaning the special rabbinic mitzvahs which the rabbi set up? Number 1, it is the drinking of the 4 cups of wine. Now, we already mentioned that we're making Kiddush. But everybody going to be having 4 cups of wine. Now, we already mentioned the 4 parts of the Seder, which we said were the highlights. Number 1, Kiddush, Magid, benching, and Hallel. Well, those are the 4 parts over which we're going to be making a cup of wine, filling up a cup of wine, and drinking it. And therefore, if you want to know where the 4 cups of wine, well, those are the 4 cups of wine are spread out throughout the Seder. Number 1, Kiddush. Number 2, Magid, the Torah mitzvah of the telling of the going out of Egypt over a cup of wine. Just like the Kiddush, the sanctification of the day is said over a cup of wine. Magid, Haggadah, is done over a cup of wine. And number 3, benching is done over a cup of wine. Number 4, Hallel is done over a cup of wine. Those are the 4 cups of wines. Now, if you're asking, why did the rabbi set up 4 cups of wine? Well, for that, if you want, in your booklet, you have the last page, the color page. I'm going to scroll down. See if I have it in here, or maybe it's in the other one. Yeah, it's in the. Rotate this. Rotate pages. No, I don't want to do that. Maybe it's in this one. No. Just go to your last page, the color page. There you see the 4 cups. The 4 cups. Right, the color page you have there. You have there, cup number 1 is Kiddush, cup number 2 is Haggadah, cup number 3 is benching, cup number 4 is Hallel. We're going to speak about the 5th cup, time permitting, what this 5th cup is all about. But the 4 cups of wine, the rabbinic mitzvah of drinking 4 cups of wine are scheduled, are highlighted, are taken from, or parallel to the 4 languages of redemption, which the Torah uses when they took the Jewish people out. So we have V'hotzetzi, V'galti, V'ga'alti, V'lakachti, and there's a 5th language called Hevesi. That's the 5th cup of wine. Going back to the page which has the outline of the mitzvah of the night. So therefore we have a Torah mitzvah of Haggadah. That was point number 5 in our outline. Eating of the matzah, which is the middle part. Drinking of the 4 cups of wine, we now saw that is spread out. There's a second rabbinic mitzvah of eating of maror. We said the eating of matzah was the Torah mitzvah. Even though in the time of the Torah, the time when we had the Korban Pesach, we eat the Korban Pesach, the meat, with lettuce, with maror, with bitter herbs, eating it together, matzah, maror, and the meat in the middle, like this Big Mac, right? Matzah on top, matzah on the bottom. Roman lettuce in the middle, and then the meat in the center, eating it together. Since today we do not have, hopefully we will have, but today we do not have the Korban Pesach, the eating of the maror is therefore not Torah mandated, but rabbinic mandated. So we're going to be eating that right after the matzah, which means we're starting the meal by eating matzah, Torah mitzvah, and then we're eating, that's number 5 on the outline page. That's the matzah is number 8 of the outline page. And after number 9, we have the maror. So therefore, in the meal part, we're going to start the meal with matzah, afterwards maror. The third rabbinic mitzvah is Hallel, which we said comes at the end. Now, what I've done is, I have made a chart, and that is the middle page in your in your booklet, which has the entire Seder charted out. You have there on top the top line, if you open up the middle section, you see there are all these 15 points on the top line. And if you, for example, if you want to know where are the 4 cups of wine, well, the 4 cups of wine on the left side start with number 1, Kiddush. All the way in the bottom, you see there's a row about the cups of wine. Then the Magid part, the Haggadah part, we use that to say that over a cup of wine. That is the 2nd cup of wine. The 3rd cup of wine you see at number 13 towards the right. And the 4th cup of wine is halal. So there you see charted out throughout the evening. Where do we have the 4 cups of wine, which is a rabbinic mitzvah? As we said, parallel to the 4 Lashonis, 4 languages of redemption, which the rabbis rather have. So here we had you see the 4 cups of wine, parallel to the 15 points. So again, everything starts in our outline with the 15 point, the outline of the Seder. But here I've charted it out all the way lengthwise, so you can see that. So what I now like to do is now zoom in a little bit and now focus on the Magid. Magid is the mitzvah of Haggadah. So how is the mitzvah of Haggadah done? So the Torah says, or the rabbis in the Gemara Pesachim say that the way you tell over the story properly is by first, here the son, asks the question, you tell over a story, and that's followed with praise, which means there are 3 parts to the mitzvah of Haggadah. Like Rabbi Gav said before, mitzvah of Haggadah is you should know how to do it properly to give it over to your son, so your son knows it to give it over. Your son, somebody has to ask, and the Gemara actually says, we mentioned it yesterday in class, that it has to be done by way of asking, and then you're telling over the story. If you didn't ask, you can't tell over the story in a proper way, because when you ask, you create a opening for the story to go into, right? If you start open, a great lecture, you start over, do you know what this is all about? And people say, oh no, I don't know what's up. Let me tell you. And now you have a place to put it into. So also the Haggadah and the way the Haggadah and the Seder night is scheduled and structured is a great lesson in chinuch, in education. What's the best way to educate? Best way to educate, making sure that they have a place to put the information in, that they have questions, that they understand that there is a place to put them. You give them the story, and then you tell them the praise, meaning what to do with it, how to internalize it. The same thing is happening at the Seder night. The same thing, Magid, the center part, is done at Seder night. So now I want to point out that if you look at the Magid section, both in your first and the first page, there are many parts to it on the left side. First, the many parts to it. Here too, we have here many parts to the to it. Let me see if you see mine. Yeah, you see there are many parts to the Magid. Number 5 is here a very long section. How long does it take? It could take, an hour and a half at a Seder. So therefore, how do you deal with it? How do you see the very parts? Let's count them up, right? Going from the back. 1, going from the back. If we count them up. Where's my mouse? Here's my mouse. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15, it's the same 15, right? Rabbi Agav was speaking about 15. 15 is a big number in the Haggadah. There are 15 dayenus. There are 15 steps which the Levites stood in the temple on the steps. 15 is the name of God, Yud and Hey. So we have 15 points. Now, what's the structure, the inner structure of these 15 points? Because it looks like that this whole section of Magid, this whole section of Haggadah, it's a long section. Is there any inner structure? And actually the Malbim finds that there is an inner structure. Because what is the source verse on which this mitzvah of Haggadah is learned out from? Well, you find that here in the center. The source verse, you find it here in the center. What's the source verse? The source verse is on which the Haggadah is based in Schloss, chapter 13, verse 8. It says there, starting out in Hebrew, V'gadada lebincha bayom hahu lemor, and you should tell to your son on that day, saying, Ba'avor zeh, for this reason, Asa Hashem li, did God for me, b'tzeisi mitzrayim, when I came out of Egypt. So the Malbim actually says there are 6 parts to this verse. And if you take the 6 parts, actually match up to 6 parts to the 15 parts of the Seder. And take a look how that matches up. And this is the reason why I created this chart, because you can actually see it once you have charted out. Once I charted out these Magid into 15 parts, now I can put here below the 6 parts of the verse. Because that matches up to these 6 parts which I put on the top line. Magid 5 is broken up into 6 parts: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you now go down below, so you see that the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections are parallel to Vegada Labidcha. Because what are the first 5 sections talking about? They're talking about who you're speaking to. You're speaking to your son. So the first parts speak about your son asked the question, and he said, "Well, why you are," and that's the why of the Haggadah. Why are we doing the Haggadah? Why are we telling it to you? Well, because we were slaves in Egypt, right? Our son asked, "My father," right? And we're going to get to the other parts that he were dipping in, where he has all kinds of questions, contradictory things happening at the Seder. Is it slavery? Is it freedom? And then the father says, "Oh, my son, you're asking good questions. Let me tell you a story," right? And the story starts. But it's the why we're telling the story. It is the reason why we're telling you the story. We're not really into the story yet, but we're into the why. And therefore, the first part is the first part is that we were slaves. Then we speak about that the great sages themselves also sat in Bnei Brak, and they also did it. It's our duty to do all times. We have to praise God for it. And then we have the 4 sons right there at the section. Right there, they speak about the 4 sons, right? The wise son, the evil son, the simple son, and the son who doesn't know how to ask. The 4 sons which are mentioned in the Seder. All of that is parallel to the first section of the verse, Vigada Labincha. The next part you find in your Haggadah speaks about Yachol Rosh Chodesh. Maybe we should do this Haggadah this coming Friday night, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Yachol Rosh Chodesh. Maybe we should tell the story of going out of Egypt on Rosh Chodesh. So the verse says, no, we're doing it on the time when we fulfill the mitzvah of what? Matzah and Ma'or, when we do the mitzvah of eating matzah. And therefore, the second part of the verse, Bayom Ha'u, is specifically talking about Bayom Ha'u. What day? The day where matzah is in front of you. And therefore, we see that the second part, 5G in our sheet, parallels to the second part of the verse, the lemor, right? You should tell your son on that day, saying, right? That is the middle section. That is 5H, 5I. That is the main part of the storytelling. And with that, you fulfill the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, of the going out of Egypt. We're going to get into that a little bit more. Then afterwards you have Ba'avor Zeh. The next part of the verse is Ba'avor Zeh. What is Ba'avor Zeh? Ba'avor Zeh parallels to Rabban Gamliel Omer, because it is not just the opening question which we have in the beginning. It's not just the why, it's not just the when, it's not just the what, but also what's the purpose of it? Why we're telling this story. Rabban Gamliel, the next point in our Haggadah, section number 4 in the Magid, speaks about, the Rabban Gamliel explains Pesach Matzah Mara, what Rabbi Gav said before. The purpose of the Seder, leaving of the freedom of the Seder, having felt the meirut, the bitterness of Egypt, and then taking it to Pesach, taking it to freedom. And therefore, the purpose of telling the story is the next section. B'chol dor v'dor is something that we use to internalize this message, and that is parallel to the section of the verse which speaks Asa Sheli. B'tzeitzi Mitzrayim says the verse, ending the verse, B'tzeitzi Mitzrayim, which is actually the opening words of the Hallel, which is the praise. Meaning, even though we said that the Hallel is at the end of the Seder, is all the way down at number 14, but we start Hallel, we make sure that the Hallel, some of the praise is done right after we finish telling, which means we're going to have an opening question, we have the story, and then we have the praise immediately following in one shot together. So what we've now seen is that the Magid is not just one long section of 15 parts. Now it matches up to the verse, and therefore you can see it. You can see there is a opening question, there's a why, there's a when, there's a what purpose, internalizing it, and then and the goal is praising God for it. That's one way. That's one part of the structure of the Maggid, which is beautiful to see. A lot of people, this was a big chiddush to them that this Maggid is a long section. No, it really actually matches the verse. There's another way to match it up, and that is like you now go to the section in your handout, which speaks about the. And let me bring it here up the screen as well. Another structure, another internal structure of the Haggadah, which is another beautiful thing. As we said, that there are three parts to the mitzvah Haggadah: questions, story, praise. If you're asking, where are the questions in the Seder? We're asking 4 different types of questions. That matches up with the 4 types of stories which we tell right after. Because we said there are 4 stories. Avadim Ayinu Mitchila. The structure follows exactly. Where there's a physical question, we're going to speak about the physical exit. Avadim Ayinu, we were slaves. There was a spiritual question being asked. We'll speak about the spiritual background of our slavery. There was a scholarly question asked. We're going into details, dissecting the verses. And then there's a tangible question asked. We're going into tangible, actual mitzvahs. And after each section, there's actually a praise as well. There's Baruch HaMakom, Baruch Shomer. It's another praise. Kamamalos, which is the Dayenu part. And Lefikach Anachnu Chayvim Lahoidos. We are there to acknowledge and praise. So there are 4 types of questions. Well, there are also 4 sons. Let's see if we can match them up. First question was a physical question. Well, that's a simple son. Why were we in slavery? Let me give you a story. A physical story. Then there was a spiritual question. Question about, hey, why are we doing all of this? That's the son, the evil son asking. Why are we involved in all these mitzvahs? Then there's a scholarly question. That's the wise son. Then we have a tangible question. That's the son who doesn't know how to ask. What do you have to do? You have to wave the matzah in front of you. If you don't have to ask, go ask. You say, why are we having this matzah? Oh, there's a night of freedom. Which means there are 4 questions, 4 stories, and 4 praise parallel to the 4 sons. What are 4 sons? There are 4 different types of people. For that matter, we ourselves have 4 types within ourselves. And therefore, we see here that the way the structure of this whole long Maggid second is done is that 4 times we're shooting arrows. 4 times we allow the son to ask questions, or we give the question in their mouth, tell the story, and allow to get it to do the praise. 4 times. So why 4 times? Because there are 4 different types of people. You can't just tell the story, everybody's the same, right? Not everybody's the same. Some people are more spiritual oriented, some are more physical oriented, some are simple oriented, some are, they question the whole foundation. That's the Russia, right? This whole foundation. So what we do is we shoot 4 arrows at the mitzvah of Haggadah, because we want to make sure that everybody gets this mitzvah. And therefore, if you're asking, what if I'm not there for the entire part? What if I went to the bathroom? What if I didn't focus, it wasn't there? You have 4 opportunities within the Haggadah to fulfill it. Meaning, even if you have part of it, there are 4 stories. Even if you have one story and not the other story, you still fulfilled the mitzvah of of the telling of the going out of Egypt, and that's a mitzvah. So that is another beautiful way to look at the structure of the Haggadah, that you have here the question, story, praise, not just the question in the beginning, story in the middle, and praise at the end. No, you actually have it within the Haggadah section itself 4 times. Something to be in awe of, because this is something beautiful. Those who have gone through Seders many times, they say, whoa, this is something new, and they really can appreciate. So at the Seder itself, you should appreciate that that's what's happening. Further, next. What other structures can we find? So we're going back now to our main page, which we have on our board. So we have the pre-Seder, the 1, 2, 3, the Kiddush. We have the Maggid, the middle section. We have the eating part, and then we have the end part, the hallow and the benching. Therefore, we have now explained the structure of the main mitzvah of the evening, which is the Torah mitzvah of the Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt, the eating of the matzah. Now, the eating of the matzah, we have here that in the 15 points, there are many parts to it. You have here rachza, 6, motzi, matzah, maror, korech, shulchan orech. What are all these parts? Well, these are all the parts we're doing anyway, but just split up into separate sections, which means yet every time you wash your hands before eating bread, matzah is bread, so you wash your hands. That's one of the things mentioned of the 6th part. Motzi, the motzi is referring to the bracha of hamotzi. Right? It's not really a whole separate section. It is just the bracha of hamotzi, because we say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And if you ask him, why don't we say hamotzi matzah min haaretz? Good question. Ask your host, ask wherever you are, why do we say hamotzi matzah min haaretz on Leila Seder? Maybe we should change that. We don't, right? Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, it's a lechem. Then matzah is referring to, number 8, is the bracha, which we say over the mitzvah of eating matzah. Maror is the bracha, which we say over the mitzvah of eating maror, and korech is eating them together, which means that there are 2 parts when we eat matzah. Number 1, we eat matzah at the beginning of the eating section, which means that is the main mitzvah of the evening, the second Torah mitzvah which we have fulfilled after we've done the Magid section. We wash our hands, we say hamotzi, we say the bracha of alachilas matzah, and then we eat the matzah, right, while leading. And that is the leading, indicating that this is a type of bread which shows that we went out of Egypt as a freedom bread. But that's a Torah mitzvah of eating matzah. However, we're going to be eating matzah at 3 different locations. Here, at Korech, and at Safun. You ask how many times we eat matzah during the Seder? 3 times. Number 1 at section number 8, at the beginning of the eating section at matzah. Then we eat maror by itself, and then we eat matzah and maror together. The amount of matzah which we eat, we mentioned it yesterday, was a bigger amount at the matzah section, because that's a Torah mitzvah. When we eat maror and we eat matzah and maror together, that's a smaller amount, to make sure that we have a mitzvah of eating maror and matzah together. That's number 10. And then we have shulchan orech. At every yontif, we have a meal. We have to make sure we have a festive meal, which we have also. Now, because already you have eaten matzah, maror, and again matzah and maror together, followed by number 11, the meal, we haven't gotten to benching yet, because there's another section called tzafun. What is tzafun? That is a 3rd time when we're eating matzah. Why are we eating matzah a 3rd time? This is parallel to the Pesach offering at the time of the temple, when we slaughter the Pesach offering in the morning of Erev Pesach, and we eat it at night. When is that eaten? That's eaten at the end of the meal. Ala sova, when a person is satisfied at the end of the meal. And therefore, parallel to the Pesach offering, which nowadays we don't have, or at this time we don't know yet if we have it, and at this time we don't have it, we eat a piece of matzah similar to the Pesach offering. We would call that in our sheet number 12, tzafun. Tzafun is Tzafun is referring to Tzafon because the Pesach offering was offered in the north side of the temple courtyard. And therefore, after the main meal, before benching, we eat another piece of matzah. For that matter, a bigger piece of matzah. And therefore, that's the 3rd time we're eating matzah. So how many times are you eating matzah, Geffen? 3 times, right? 1 time at the beginning of the meal as the main mitzvah of eating matzah with a lot of simcha. 2nd time eating matzah more together, because the matzah more was eaten together with the Pesach, which we don't have. And then we're eating another piece of matzah at the end of the meal to parallel to the Pesach offering which was done. Then we have Barech, the benching. So in terms of focusing on the eating part of the Seder, we have here the matzah eating, 3 times the matzah eating. We spoke about the 4 times wine is drunk at the 4 sections at the Seder, at Kiddush, Magid, benching, and Hallel. Eating of the maror. I want to spend a moment about the eating of the maror. We mentioned yesterday in class. We're eating the maror at the right after we're eating matzah itself. The rabbis instituted eating maror because the Torah says you have to eat maror together with the Pesach offering, which we don't have. So therefore, it's a rabbinic mitzvah to eating maror. So it has to be something which is coming from a herb or a vegetable which has a bitter source to it. The roots of, for example, lettuce is bitter, even though Roman lettuce can be sweet, and you're allowed to have sweet Roman lettuce in the fulfillment of the maror. Still, since it is a bitter herb, we use that to eat and to indicate and to identify the fact that this is the time in the evening, the time of the year when we commemorate, when we celebrate, when we identify the fact that we were slaves in Egypt. Our forefathers were embittered by the Egyptians. And therefore, we eat maror to solidify that within ourselves. The maror, number 9, is referring to the bracha of Sher Kiddushanim Mitzvah ala Chilas Maror, on the eating of the maror, which is a piece of Roman lettuce. Now there's a question, what about the bracha over that maror? We said a special bracha over the matzah, that's Hamotzi Lechem and Aretz. What about the special bracha over the maror? Well, going back to point number point number 2, early in the evening, we're eating number 3, we're eating karpas. We have that here in the board. Number 2, karpas. Karpas is a urchatz and karpas, or karpas is the main one, is a dip which we do in the beginning and evening. The reason why we do a dip in the beginning and evening is because we want to make sure that our children say, hey, there's something different is going on. Normally we make Kiddush and we wash our hands and we go right into the meal. Now, make Kiddush, and then a father starts to, lean and start to dip and start to, look at something is going on. You start asking questions. Well, at that dip, you're also eating something. What are you eating? You're eating a vegetable. On a vegetable which we're eating, you just said the bracha of agafen over the wine. You have to make a bracha over it. Bracha of borei pri adama. Well, that bracha of borei pri adama can actually be used, or can have in mind, you should have in mind, that covers the maror at number 9 eating as well. Because there's a big question whether or not you should say a bracha over the maror. L'maisa we don't. But the bracha of, which we say over the karpas, right in the beginning, at number 3, will cover the maror which we have in number 9. In number 9. So have that in mind to fulfill that part in terms of the Hilchos Brachas. Next. In terms of some of the halachas, if we're going through now the outline of the Seder night, now in order to make sure they have the different parts covered. Going back to number 1, we have Kiddush. So the Kiddush itself is the standard Kiddush which we say Friday night, but here it's combined with the Kiddush speaking about the Yontif. Now, since Kiddush on Friday night is a Torah mitzvah in and of itself, the cup which we use for Kiddush is going to double up as one of the 4 cups which we drink during the evening, as we said. And unlike the scenario that in general, one person makes Kiddush and everybody else listens and doesn't even drink necessarily, on Leila Seder, since the rabbinic mitzvah is to drink 4 cups of wine, everybody at the Seder, everybody will have a cup in front of them and will drink most of the cup, or most of the revi'is, most of a amount of this wine or grape juice. Again, while leaning, because this is an act which is done while leaning. And if you're asking, well, what are the parts you have to do while leaning? If you go to your chart, your big chart in the middle, I have on the bottom, I made a row here. What are the times you have to lean, and what are the parts you don't have to lean? The rule is you lean when you're eating or drinking something which is freedom related. You don't lean, you don't do it laying down, leaning, when it's slavery related. So therefore, drinking of 4 cups of wine were parallel to the 4 language of redemption, which is freedom related. Therefore, anytime you drink a cup of wine, you see cup of wine, leaning. Drinking of the cup of wine, leaning. Benching, leaning. 4th cup of wine, leaning. So therefore, at any time we drink wine, we lean. Furthermore, whenever you eat matzah, you lean. That's the case where you eat the matzah at the main part when you eat the matzah. Motzi matzah at number 8. Make sure you lean. Right, when you're eating matzah. But when we get to the maror, we get to number 9, we're eating maror. Do you have to lean there? No, it does not say you have to lean because it's a slavery related part. So that's another thing to be aware of. Going back to the midst of the evening, the structure of the evening, the main parts of the evening. So we said we have a karpas, we have a dip beforehand, which we wash our hands for. How much time do I have, Rabbi Katz?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. Okay, great. 4 minutes. What? Okay, say it. Beautiful. We wash our hands similar to the washing our hands for a meal. We spoke about it yesterday also in our class at length, that just like before washing of the hands, before eating bread, we wash our hands in order to eat the bread in purity. Also before eating a wet fruit on the Leila Seder, we're stringent and we're careful to eat the karpas, a vegetable dipped in salt water, also in purity. Yachatz is an important part. Number 4, what's happening at Yachatz? We take the middle matzah, we break it in half. That's a whole line item, that's the whole point. And says yes, because the mitzvah of matzah, which we're going to be eating in the middle, specifically has to be done after Magid, after the Haggadah is said. Because you can only eat the matzah, which is poor man's bread, because in the entire Seder, the entire Haggadah, the telling of the going out of Egypt, was said over this bread. Now, what does a poor man eat? Big, nice loaves of challah, loaves of bread, the challah, or no, he eats a piece of bread. And therefore, we specifically break one of the 3 matzahs in order to have a half a piece, because this is poor man's bread. We didn't have a lot of food to eat. We only had morsels of food. And therefore, we break the matzah in half, therefore creating poor man's bread, over which the whole Haggadah is being done. So therefore, right before number 5, Haggadah is done, we do Yachatz. So after Yachatz, we have number 5. We have the whole Haggadah, which we went through and we saw the inner structure. At that point, after you finish the Haggadah, which includes saying the 2 paragraphs of Hallel, I'll be finishing up, Rabbi Zucker. We have the middle section, which we mentioned was the eating section, which is washing of our hands, motzi, matzah, maror, korech, eating the matzah and maror together, shulchan aruch, having the meal, eating the afikomen, and benching. And right after benching, we said we have the 3rd part of the evening, or the goal part of the evening. That's the Hallel. If you ask him, what is nirtza all about? What is nirtza? Nirtza is, will we be accepted? So nirtza is really we're not really saying anything at nirtza. We're just saying v'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. Literally, the word nirtza means that let us be accepted in the eyes of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Rav Lev has a beautiful mashal with regards to what nirtza is let's say, you're a student at the university and you bring your laptop, your small laptop, doesn't have any information there, but you like to connect to the university's database, huge database. So they tell you, okay, fine, connect your laptop to the database, right? You take your wire and you plug in another wire, right? When you get to the 15th wire, now you're fully connected, and now you get all that data from this huge database. Nirtza really is at the point of the Seder when we finished doing all these 15 points, all these 14 points at the Seder, at point number 15, we are nirtza, we are accepted. We now are fully connected, and now we have the full inspiration and the full spiritual dimensions and spiritual heights from the Seder, and therefore it is a time when we appreciate what's happening at the Seder and be accepted to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The last thing I'm just going to mention and not speaking out is the chart you have at the end. This is a beautiful understanding from Rabbi Lev that at the Seder night we are reliving, building ourselves as being part of the Jewish people. Jewish people means that we identified ourselves with the Jewish people. We recognize the resource what we have, and we know what to do as a Jewish people. Looking at this chart, and I'm leaving you this as your homework, the charts, you'll see that the 4 cups on the Seder actually go through the identification of the Jewish people, looking at the resource which we have, the Torah learning, and being part of the Jewish people, and what to do with that, the goal, praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and fixing the world. So once you study that chart, which is another structure of the Seder, going through the entire Seder, not just the structure of the inner structure of the Magid, but the structure of the entire Seder, starting from Kiddush, Haggadah, and benching, and Hallel, you'll see that the Seder is a fantastic opportunity to really grow and to really change, your being part of the Jewish people. Hopefully this class on the structure of the Haggadah was helpful, and our Seder should be very different and be a lot better, and should continue to grow and to have a great Chag Kasher V'Sameach and a great Seder night.